Hi Langley, this is Mrs. Faulkner, and I'm going to be reading Chapter 14 of Playground Millionaire. Chapter 14, A Perfect Opportunity. Cleo had to chase Kaylee down at first recess. She found her at the tetherball pole, waiting to play either Tessa or Lexi Lewis, depending on who won. She elbowed Kaylee. I told you it would be okay. Kaylee didn't return her smile. Lexi pounded the ball around and around. You're really good at that, Cleo shouted above the sounds of the game. Whack, whiz, clang. Thanks, Lesnore. Whack, whiz, clang. Cleo didn't have time to get mad. She was working fortune principle number 7, compliments win customers. She hadn't forgotten her goal of winning Lexi Lewis's business, and now she knew for a fact that she did have a loose tooth in that big mouth of hers. The last of the rope coiled around the pole. Tether! Lexi looked at Cleo out of the corner of her eye. You playing? It sounded like a challenge. Kaylee was here first. Lexi unwound the ball. Kaylee took Tessa's spot. Lexi served the ball above Kaylee's head, and it wrapped around the pole. 1, around again. 2, Lexi slapped it. 3, if Kaylee didn't get the ball soon, she would be through. Lexi lost her balance, and Kaylee whacked it back. Boom, around again. Boom. Cleo had never seen her best friend go after a ball like that. Kaylee scowled and pounded the ball. Boom! She was like a heavyweight boxer hitting someone she really didn't like. Time out, Lexi called. She reached down as if she dropped something on the ground. Just as she stood, Kaylee hammered the ball again, double-fisted. The ball smashed right into Lexi's face. Ow! Lexi's hands flew to her face. Oh no, Kaylee cried. I'm so sorry. I have an audition for a TV commercial tomorrow, Lexi screeched from behind her hands. I didn't mean to, Kaylee rushed over. She reached out, but Lexi shrugged her off. If you broke my nose, I'll have my dad sue your dad. Kaylee looked at her blankly. It's going to be swollen, I can tell. If I don't get that part, it'll be your fault. You should get the part, Cleo crossed her arms, because you sure know how to act. Butt out, Lesnore. She didn't even hit you that hard. Lexi lowered her hands, peering into them. Was she looking for a tooth? Fortune principle number 5 popped into Cleo's head. A visionary sees opportunities everywhere, especially in crises. This crisis was a perfect opportunity. Is your mouth okay? She asked. I think it's bleeding, Lexi moaned. Cleo got closer. Let me look. Lexi eyed her cautiously. It's okay. I know first aid. Lexi opened her mouth. Cleo had to stand on her toes to see inside. There's some blood around one of your teeth. I think it might be loose. Lexi held her teeth and groaned. A loose tooth. Cleo tapped her lips with her finger, then held the finger in the air. I know just the place you could go to have it removed. Tessa has used our service with stunning results. Am I right, Tessa? Tessa bared her teeth, revealing her gaps. No, Lexi started toward the building. I'm not going to use your stupid business. Cleo caught up with her. My business is not stupid. It really works. I'm offering a special, today only, 50 cents a tooth. Lexi kept walking. Cleo stayed with her. Just give it a try. She grabbed Lexi's arm. Get your hands off of me, you freak. I am not a freak. Why else would your mom give you away? She tossed the question over her shoulder lightly, as if she were talking about clothes that had gotten too small. Her words hit Cleo like a sucker punch to the gut. Anger twisted her insides like a tornado. She lashed out with her fists, not even sure who or what she was hitting. The tornado had control of her arms and legs. She would claw and kick and punch until all of the anger and hurt were gone. But the more she hit, the worse she felt. Someone screamed. It might have been herself, or was it Lexi? Maybe it was the blur of kids who had come around. She felt a firm grip on her elbow, heard Mr. Boring's voice in her ear. Calm down, Cleo. She breathed as hard as if she'd just run laps with Dad's soccer team. Her knuckles hurt. Lexi sat on the ground sobbing, her face in her hands. Cole crouched at his sister's side. Another teacher was there, helping her up. Lexi cried out, My tooth, it's gone! She knocked my tooth out! Everyone stared. A few kids started looking around on the ground. Micah Mitchell shouted, Here it is, and handed the tooth to Lexi. She glared at Cleo as the teacher led her away. It was already loose, Cleo pleaded to Mr. Boring. She needed her teacher to understand. He said they needed to go to the office. She looked around for Kaylee, but Kaylee stayed where she was, in a huddle of girls, only once glancing in Cleo's direction. Hey, Cole trotted up. I know my sister can be a pain, but you didn't have to go all MMA on her. Cleo tried to say sorry, but she was afraid she might cry. Mr. Boring looked serious. He nudged her forward. Come on, Cleo, let's get inside. It suddenly dawned on Cleo. She was in a lot of trouble. She spent the rest of the morning in the office, first waiting until Lexi had seen the nurse, then sitting in front of Principal Yu, talking about what had happened. My dad is a lawyer. He'll sue you for damages, Lexi threatened. She had suddenly gained a lisp, as if her tongue didn't know what to do with the new gap in her mouth. Hold on now. Principal Yu leaned forward in his chair. Nurse Bashara said she didn't see any injuries, just your tooth, which I've been told was loose already. Thank you, Mr. Boring. So, girls, what happened out there? Mr. Yu pushed his black-rimmed glasses farther up on his nose. She attacked me! Cleo, do New Heights Eagles use hitting to solve problems? He stared at Cleo, unblinking. Cleo felt herself getting warmer, as if Principal Yu's gaze had fire-starting power. No, Mr. Yu. She kept her eyes on her lap, wishing he would stop staring at her. No, they don't. New Heights Eagles talk it out, and if it's too big a problem to resolve on their own, they get an adult. Lexi crossed her arms. She was pestering me to use her tooth-pulling business. She moved like a bobblehead toy, her head swiveling on her neck as she spoke. She pulls teeth with a Nerf gun. She did it to my brother before school, behind the portable. She's obsessed. Principal Yu's eyebrows rose. A Nerf gun? Behind the portable? Meatloaf and McDonald's. Actually, Cleo needed to speak up before Lexi Lewis had her convicted and on her way to jail, or rather suspension. It was for a class project, my passion project. Your passion is pulling teeth? Mr. Yu looked at her over the top of his glasses. No, Cleo laughed. Silly Principal Yu. Starting businesses. I got the idea for a tooth removal service when one of my friends was afraid to pull her own teeth. I have an ad on YouTube if you want to see. Cleo leaned forward excitedly. Mr. Yu pushed back his chair. Maybe later. Please stay here, ladies. He left his office. Lexi Lewis smiled smugly. Cleo drummed her fingers on her thighs. Was she in trouble for the Nerf gun or not? A few minutes later, Mr. Yu came back with Mr. Boring. Cleo's heart sank. Mr. Boring took the seat next to Cleo. Cleo, did you bring a Nerf gun to school? His eyes were kind, but she knew the answer would seriously disappoint him. She looked at her hands in her lap. Yes, Mr. Boring. Her head snapped up. But I wasn't playing with it. And I wasn't hurting anyone. She glanced at Principal Yu. Pulled a few loose teeth, that's all. Principal Yu sucked in his breath. I'm sorry, Miss Oliver, but between initiating a fight with Miss Lewis, she's the one who started it, Cleo wanted to shout. And bringing a gun to school. Not a gun, Mr. Yu. My extractor extraordinaire. Trademark. Lexi scoffed under her breath. And bringing a gun to school, I'm going to have to send you home for the day as a consequence of your poor choices. Mr. Yu, Mr. Boring spoke, if I may interject for just a moment, do we know what prompted the outburst? He turned to Cleo. Why did you hit Lexi? Cleo's palms were suddenly clammy. Her heart beat so hard it shook her chest. She needed to get away, to go home. Principal Yu turned to her. Miss Oliver? Telling Mr. Yu what Lexi had said would be like Barkley exposing his belly. He only did that with family. Miss Oliver. She couldn't repeat the words. She was making fun of me because I'm adopted. Principal Yu cleared his throat. I'm very sorry to hear that. His blowtorch gaze landed squarely on Lexi. Miss Lewis, is being adopted something to make fun of? Lexi huffed. I guess not. You guess not? His face was turning red. No, it's not. Girls, I'll be talking to your parents and teachers about further actions in light of today's incident. Now, you need to apologize to each other. Apologizing was surely the last thing in the world that Cleo wanted to do, but she knew there was no escaping it. I'm sorry. The words came out pinched and tight, like money being pulled from a miserly person's hand. Lexi barely glanced at her. Sorry. She said it like a knife jab. Mr. Yu pushed up his glasses again. Miss Lewis, please return to class. Lexi put her hand to her mouth and winced in pain. She gave a little sob, then sulked from the room. An excellent performance. Miss Oliver, will one of your parents be able to pick you up? Mr. Yu asked. Cleo gasped. I still have to go home? She thought what she'd told him about Lexi would change his mind. He nodded once. My mom, she said, avoiding Mr. Boring's gaze. I'll call now. You may wait in the main office. He and Mr. Boring exchanged glances. Thank you, Mr. Boring. Mr. Boring's name suddenly struck Cleo as funny. Coming from Mr. Yu's serious mouth, it was hilarious. Hysterical. Hilarysterical. She couldn't stop giggling. Mr. Boring led her to the row of chairs along the front window. He sat next to her. What's so funny? She looked up at him. Your name, she sputtered, and laughed some more. Thankfully, Mr. B was laughing with her. Your tooth-pulling method is brilliant, by the way. Thanks, Mr. B, but I have a feeling I won't be using it again anytime soon. If only she hadn't gotten so worked up about Lexi's stupid words, maybe she wouldn't be unemployed. What do you think, Coco? That's chapter 14. Happy reading, Langley Leopards.